Welcome to Cultivating Conservation. I'm Kelly Nichols. In this module, we will be reviewing examples of conservation practices that can be installed on farms. There are lots of different types of conservation practices: conserving water, conserving soil, protecting wildlife. And there's not a one size fits all for every farm, but there really is something for everyone. Now, there are conservation programs, for example, some cost share programs that can help farmers with the cost of installing these conservation practices. And we'll talk about that in a different module. For now, we will be reviewing conservation practices and examples of what some of those are and the benefits of them and what they look like on the farm. Cover crops. This is a very popular conservation practice here in Maryland and in the Mid-Atlantic. Lots of different cover crops. They're very versatile, lots of different benefits. And cover crops do just as the name suggests. They are crops that are grown to cover the soil. Typically in our region, these are planted in the fall, and then they either winter kill, as in the case of the radish, which you can see in both of these pictures. The radish doesn't like the very cold freezing temperatures, so that actually kills the plant. So cover crops are either winter killed, or if they do grow through the winter, they are terminated by the farmer either by using a pesticide or a piece of equipment called a roller crimper, which crimps the stem and kills the plant. Mentioned cover crops are very versatile. They provide a lot of different benefits, including weed control. Some of them encourage pollinators. They help build organic matter in the soil. Since this is a crop that you are not harvesting, you're letting it essentially decompose in the soil, scavenging nitrogen or providing nitrogen, improving soil health, and overall, with that increase, helping to increase yields. So lots of different benefits again. And these benefits also do depend on management. So for example, planting them at the correct time, terminating them at the correct time, but lots of different things and benefits we've seen from cover crops. Some popular cover crops include cereal rye. Rye is an excellent nitrogen scavenger, meaning it takes up nitrogen and then it's in the plant. And then when the rye is terminated, that plant decomposes, the nitrogen is released, it goes back into the soil, and so we have it there for our next crop to use. Rye has a great root system, so help preventing soil erosion. And rye is also really good at weed suppression. Rye actually sends out some chemicals into the soil that suppresses weeds. And also as it grows and shades out the soil, not enough sunlight reaches the soil, so weed seeds can't germinate. Radish is another popular cover crop. Radish helps prevent erosion. It helps suppress weeds. And you can see in the picture there that there is a very nice large white taproot. And so that taproot can actually help break up soil compaction as it grows and gets bigger. Crimson clover is a legume. And as a legume, legumes will form a beneficial relationship with certain bacteria. The bacteria you can inoculate the seed and add the bacteria to the seed essentially, so that those bacteria are in the soil and can have that relationship with the plant. And as a legume, those bacteria can actually take nitrogen from the air and convert it into a form that the plants can use. And in turn, the plant provides the bacteria with energy. So it's a nice beneficial relationship that we have there with legumes, so we can add nitrogen back into the soil to be used for the next crop. And crimson clover, with its flowers, might encourage pollinators and also prevents erosion. High tunnels, also called hoop houses, are another conservation practice. And with high tunnels, you can see that they kind of look like a greenhouse. So similar to a greenhouse, it's a little bit warmer in the high tunnel than it might be outside. So this allows farmers to extend the growing season. They can plant a little bit earlier, and they can keep crops in the high tunnel a little bit later compared to growing, out in a field without any cover, again, allowing to extend the season and have, fresh vegetables available a little bit longer than what we might typically see. The Natural Resource Conservation Service, or NRCS, has a great video about high tunnels that you can find at the link at the bottom of the slide. Tree plantings. We plant trees because trees, for one, they are perennials, and so you have an established plant that will continue to grow in that area. With its really deep root system, helping to prevent soil erosion. Tree plantings may act as a buffer so that any water that comes down through that area is filtered out. Any sediment, any nutrients can be filtered out before it hits any water body. Trees can also create habitat for birds, other wildlife. And so, again, tree plantings, another good example of a common conservation practice. Gutters and rain barrels. If we did not have gutters on a barn roof, for example, the rain would fall, it would hit the roof, it would fall off the roof and potentially right into the barn lot. And then the rainwater, which we'll consider clean, is now mixed in the barn lot, maybe a muddy area, so it's no longer clean. By adding gutters, we're now capturing that rainwater and essentially piping it, sending it to another location. For example, it might be a grassy area around the barn, again, keeping it clean, and the grassy area can filter out any sediments or nutrients, again, before we reach a stream body or a water body. And adding rain barrels, this is now a collection system that we can capture that rainwater. And sometimes it's used for irrigation to help water the crops, and sometimes it can be used to help water livestock as well. Buffer strips and pollinator strips. These are areas that are planted into specific species. In the case of a buffer strip, often these are planted along a stream or near another water body, again, to help filter out any sediments and nutrients that are in that water before it gets into the stream. Pollinator strips, as you can see here from the picture, are a planting of specific species designed to attract pollinators. So lots of bright colors, lots of flowers, again, helping to increase pollinators in the area and increase the biodiversity and help the ecosystem. Speaking of habitat, we just talked about pollinators and buffer strips, and pollinator strips as a habitat for pollinators, but we can also have habitat for other wildlife on the farm as well. So, for example, there may be a wetland area on the farm, managing that wetland so it can house, turtles or maybe other aquatic species, certain birds. Maybe it's a meadow area where maybe things like pheasants or quail or other things like to nest and call home. Again, increasing the biodiversity and looking at the ecosystem as a whole in some areas on the farm that may not be used to grow crops or to house livestock. Animals and manure. If you have animals on your farm, you also have manure. So how do we manage that manure? How do we store it? What do we do with any animal mortalities? So conservation practices surrounding manure. One could be an animal mortality disposal, as seen in the picture on the top left. So we've got a compost pile that is going to help break those down, and then can be used as a nutrient source. Manure storage structures, building a structure to house the manure, again, so the manure is in its place and it's not moving somewhere that we may not want it. Heavy use areas. Mentioned earlier with barnyards, sometimes come as barn lots, and sometimes those barn lot areas are used heavily by animals. They have a lot of foot traffic. Maybe that's where the waterer is, or that's where the feeder is. So they tend to congregate in those areas. That's where the shade is. So managing that area as a heavy use area, for example, maybe putting it in concrete so that way it's not a muddy mess. or putting, a nice gravel stone area down. And then another example or another part of heavy use area could be looking at the area around it and saying, okay, we're going to make sure that the area surrounding the barn lot is maybe in pasture or in a grassy area, so that if anything runs off the barn lot, it goes through the grass and is, anything nutrient sediment is filtered out. Silvopasture is the practice of raising livestock in a forested area. So again, maybe using some areas of the farm for grazing that might not have been used before. So taking advantage of that, and also, managing the forested area as well. A watering facility, providing water to your livestock. So installing one of these so that way, they have a place to get water, and then perhaps maybe they're not congregating in the stream to get water, or in another area to get water that maybe you don't want them to be in. Right. Moving away from livestock a little bit here, pesticide solutions. Where are your pesticides stored? The one conservation practice on a farm is to build a pesticide storage shed. And this shed or building is specifically designed to house pesticides. The floor actually might be or is a little sloped, and that's designed to contain spills. So if, hopefully not, but if there would be a spill, it would be contained. It would be able to be cleaned up. And then, we're not impacting the environment by having leaks and spills. It would be contained in the building, and everything outside would be protected. And then anything that spilled can be pumped out, put back in the sprayer, and disposed of properly. Precision agriculture. This is using technology to help apply things such as pesticides or nutrients. And so the top right picture there shows a couple of monitors in the tractor. So for example, yield monitors, makes a nice map, and you can see the yield as you move through the field. And at the end, again, getting a nice map of the higher yielding areas of the field and the lower yielding areas of the field. Maybe those higher yielding areas don't need as much nutrients. Maybe those lower yielding areas of the field need a little bit more nutrients. And so creating a nice precision recipe, if you will, for specific areas of the field, and helping to be specific with where we're putting nutrients. And also with pesticides, there's technology now that the tractor or the sprayer, knows where it's been in the field. And so if it knows that you've already sprayed that one section of the field, it will shut off sections of the boom so that we're not overlapping and spraying too much. So again, it's about not under applying and not getting the amount of nutrients or not getting the amount of crop protection that we need. But it's also about not over applying and having excess and having things leave the field potentially, which is not what we want. Along those same lines with nutrients and soil fertility is taking a soil test, taking a soil sample, sending it off to a lab. The lab can tell you the nutrients that are in your soil and the levels and where they're at. And between the lab as well as your nutrient management plan can give recommendations on the amount of nutrients that should be applied for that field for that specific crop. Again, not under applying, not over applying. And the last example of a conservation practice that we'll give is organic transitioning. So for farms who want to transition to organic, there's a period of time, 3 years, where we're making that transition from maybe some conventional farming to organic farming, and shifting practices to align with the organic standards. And so another example of a conservation practice that can be found on a farm. Thank you.